Okay, so I'll start with a bit of background about me and how I came up with this methodology. So I've been in testing for some time. I'm quite old. I've been around. I've had quite a few jobs, but I'm not currently a tester. Currently, I'm an engineering team leader, which offers up quite a lot of opportunities because I am still a tester at heart and I want to ship quality software. There's lots of other things that engineers prioritize, but I'm still on the side of quality is key. I don't want to deliver anything that doesn't satisfy all our customers' wants and needs. I've been doing a lot of things. I've led teams across different countries. I've got an MBA. I've chartered manager, stuff and things. But the important thing is having this opportunity to tailor the way a team functions to drive quality was always my key. More important than anything else. So transitioning from a QA to a responsible for the delivery of software. Again, quality of software is more important to me than whether these lines of code are as maintainable as they could be, or if the technical debt's been managed correctly, because the customer is going to keep coming back if they value the quality of the product and they don't raise defects, and we don't have to manage all the drama that comes with that. And then we can just focus on writing software and making sure it works. The other challenge I had was, while I became the team leader, they also decided that they didn't need QAs anymore. So I'm now in an environment where I was the QA. I've been doing it for a long time. I'm now the leader of a team, but there are no QAs, and everybody is a QA or not a QA, depending on how you look at it, which, again, brings some challenges. But because I'm in charge, I can then decide how I want everyone to behave, and that then steers into everyone becoming a QA, actually being a QA as well as an engineer. Again, I've come up with some methodologies to manage that and make sure that people think about quality first, rather than just satisfying the requirement. The specific area of software development that I'm in is all about analytics. It's all about surfacing data, processing it, and then making it available to a CFO or whatever, so they can make decisions on their business. And that then requires data. Traditionally, I would be at the end of the process going, I need to know this, that, and the other, because otherwise I can't validate that this feature is functioning. I need to know all there is to know about where the data comes from. And that was something that was then just done at the end. I would then identify issues, and it would go back to the beginning, and you get that whole cycle. Because I am responsible for the delivery of everything, I can then make that choice of, we need to, together, decide what data is required, what is important, how are we going to prove that this feature functions, which then means that I just push that onto everybody. So the PM, the product manager, the business analyst needs to come to the table with all the data as well as the requirements, because otherwise I don't want to start my delivery. I don't want to deliver software without knowing that it's going to function and it's going to surface the right numbers. So I wanted to bring that as early as possible. The whole shift left thing, I want it to go right to the beginning, and they just think quality first, which worked a treat, because I was able to just tell them, this is how we're going to work from now on. So another thing to notice, when you're working in analytics and you're all working with AI models, the features that you're generating behave differently depending on the data that you're working with. That's just how it is. So if we get hand-cranked data that only satisfies a few scenarios, then there's a significant risk that what we deliver doesn't actually handle customer data and it doesn't behave the way that everyone expects. So I had to put a lot of effort into making people think, where is this data coming from? What are the processes that people can go through to generate that data? What's the variety that could look like? And then all those thoughts have to be done at the beginning, and then we have to understand that data, and then only going from there can we start delivering features. So it's all about data state verification. Yeah. Understanding what you're going to surface is the first step to then being able to deliver the software. So again, test first. And one idea to do that is to generate a spreadsheet model where you'd have, it's a lot of work. It does mean that things don't start until you've done this activity, but it does reduce the risk. So in that activity, because you understand a very significant portion of what could be done, there are no surprises, or at least not many. There's almost zero risk because you've modeled what customer behavior looks like in data and you've put that into your environment. It's in every environment. It's in the developer's environment. It's in the test environment. It's everywhere along the way, so you can easily validate the features that you're going to deliver. But it also drives design changes because based on the data that you're seeing, people will change their opinion on what they want the features to look like. Because until they've modeled it, they don't really know what it's going to look like, which is fair. I do like putting in quotes from Kent Beck. Yes, I didn't steal this methodology from him completely, but Kent Beck is all about managing fear. And because there's no QAs who just want to prove that everything works and everyone's a dev, I wanted to change the whole structure so devs can just focus on their little slice of the pie without having to worry about anything else because it's all handled for them. And that's the approach I've taken. It is handled. They just get in there and do the things, and the framework handles the rest. Which means that because, I mean, I haven't mentioned that bit yet, but because automation handles everything outside it, the data is the input, and we already know the output because we've modeled it on a spreadsheet. The automation mirrors that spreadsheet output, and then the engineering just happens in the middle. And I've been doing it for 7 years. We had a lot of fun with an AI model. AI models are fun because any dodgy data you put in just means that you get dodgy data out. And then it's trying to give you insights into your data. And if you don't understand the data, you can't validate that those insights are actually valid. We got an off-the-shelf model and we tried to test it. We're like, I don't know if this model works. So the only way we actually were able to do that is by using our own data, like actually our company's data anonymized. But then we needed to use people who actually generated that data to work with us to validate those insights. Because again, you can't validate a model without fully understanding your data. Sad fact, once we actually delivered the product and it went into production, our customers didn't know their data either. So they couldn't really validate the model. And after a lot of work, we got to the point where customers' data isn't actually as clean as they thought it was. So they're getting a lot of anomalies. Many months later, we realized that this feature actually wasn't a goer because of that validation. Just proved that it actually wasn't really worth the money. But it's thanks to our trust of data that allowed us to make those judgments. Another case study we had, delivering this lovely dashboard. You can ignore the boxes, but there's a lot of complexity. So not only is the data complex, but the actual features that we're delivering on top of that adds that level of complexity. The example is you're running a project and you're a project manager, you've got a squillion resources and they are expected to submit time cards. They also have an expectation of what work schedule they're going to do. Maybe they're working more hours, maybe they're working less hours. And based on how they work, you want to change their future schedule to match what they've been doing in the past. We've got a lot of calculations that would need to be validated, and traditionally that would just be the tester, the QA at the end of the process going, how am I going to prove all these numbers are correct? And then having to do all the legwork to understand where the data came from. It came from a lot of different places to be able to validate that. With the approach that I took, everybody worked together to gather the data, to fully understand what would be surfaced on this dashboard, to then in the spreadsheet have those numbers to say that if these 30 projects were running, 5 projects, with the 30 resources, and they all behaved in different ways with different work calendars over different regions, different jobs that had different cost rates per hour, that all that working together with different holidays, obviously different schedules, that they would then generate these results. And with the automation that we had also delivered that validates that these numbers are exactly matching the spreadsheet that we wrote, all the software just gets done in the middle, and the spreadsheet matches the automation results, and there are no concerns, no surprises, and everything just runs smoothly without any fear, which is a big deal, because then you're working in a nice low-stress environment where people can feel free to change that feature to a slightly different method, to handle some technical debt, to use AI to generate some code. It all doesn't matter because the automation framework will handle everything to give you that confidence that you can just play with and make those changes. One of the challenges, there's lots of challenges. One of the challenges is the quality of the data that you're generating. We have a lot of generators that generate test data, but they're all written by devs on different teams, and they don't care about their data quality. It's just some records that have to exist for them to be able to function, which means that we can't use the automated approach. They actually switch off the validation rules so they can enter data. Like, oh my word, really? Really? Yeah, they do that because it helps them go faster. And there's less chance of them having issues just in the loading because they just want to go faster. They have their own standards. So we had to actually hand crank our CSV files. It's not a great position. Yeah, no, it's not great. And they do it because they want to keep you happy. But having that control, being able to say, yes, this resource works 3 hours on a Tuesday and 4 hours on a Wednesday, and maybe on a Friday they work slightly different hours, and then there's a bank holiday, and all that has to be included in the test data. It can't just be easily generated. It is a significant effort. It obviously means that a lot of effort has to be put up front. Yeah, that's not great, but people get over it. And once they've put in that effort, everything else goes faster. Once you've delivered a feature, there will be enhancements, there will be defects. They still happen, but there's not actually that many, which means that we can just then deliver all the future things instead of worrying about handling defects that were raised against features we delivered 2 years ago, which can be a pain. This is a good one. So my team's obviously the light blue, and these are just examples of other teams over the years. I've seen a big difference in the number of defects that have been raised by our customers, by other teams, against the software that my team produces. I think that's based on this approach. Obviously, there are other factors, but The numbers don't lie. So obviously, we're not called Team Alpha, but it's just to represent what's going on. So if you wanted to go implement test data-driven development in your area, you could, if you were given permission. But you would need to follow these steps. You would need to perform a significant investigation into the data that you're surfacing, whether they are objects or tables, how it all fits together, how it's inserted, all those business rules to try and represent the customers that you support. If you can achieve about something reasonable, 80% would be great, but you try your best and create the spreadsheet, put the effort in, understand the calculations. It can change the implementation of the features that you'll be delivering, having that understanding. And then you just, build the software, produce the automation that matches your models, and then over time, there will be defects, but when they come in, you just alter your data that you're basing it all on to match those new understandings. There are surprises. Customers don't usually use the system the way we expect it to, and that's what you've got to handle. And it works a treat. I'd stole another quote from Kent Beck and then changed it slightly. I'm not an amazing programmer. I am still a tester at heart, and I just want software to be delivered quickly, easily, and without worries. Do you have any questions? Yes.
So a hypothetical situation, which probably a few of us might have felt before with clients and things like that, how would you roll onto a client where you've been given a specific type of scenario to improve the quality around the data that they use during testing, teams and things like that? However, all the knowledge on the data objects and the data relationships and everything is ultimately left the business. So you've got pockets of information that sit, but you're expected to kind of bring all that together with systems like Lotus Notes and things like that store some of this information, just to get the insight. How would you kind of approach that?
So my team have been moving around for a while. So often we get into a new product and they're like, oh, just deliver some analytics for this area. And there's a lot of conversations that need to be had with product. They've usually got that awareness. I also have opportunities to talk to customers directly and have access to their test environments to be able to observe their data structures. Obviously, otherwise we wouldn't know what kind of models to go for. And documentation. There's often a lot of documentation on features. Okay.
Blind leading the blind.
Wow.
Sentiment, so yeah.
Okay. There's got to be a lot of exploratory work, and you'd have to do all that legwork yourself.
I'm up to my eyes in databases at the moment, So I just wondered if you had a more efficient way.
No, sorry. It sounds like a pretty challenging situation to be in.
Pardon?
Pretty challenging situation to be in, yes.
But ultimately looking to roll out some form of test data management tool, so they can obviously self-serve and things like that, but it's proving a little bit complex because there's very limited information on more of the relationship type things and API type information. So it's fun.
Nice. Yes.
I was just wondering, at what scale the team would need to be in, or maybe the majority of the company would need to be in for this to kind of hit its ideal use case. So I guess if you're starting fully from scratch, you might not necessarily have all the use cases identified and stuff like that. So is there kind of an area that you'd say this is best aimed at for kind of teams at certain levels?
That's a tricky one. So when we first started, there was no good data, and we just had to, over time, over the years when we work on different products and automate those, we then start building up that quality of data. So say we've got 20 products and we start on 2 and then we move on to 3. And I've now externalized the loading of data to a separate product so that it can then be used everywhere. And then people have started to feed into it and they've cottoned on to the benefits. So it is being enhanced now by other teams. So you don't need to put as much effort in up front anymore because the data's already there. And they've put the effort into explaining why each piece of data is there. So when you get a defect and you go, oh, what's it against? It's against this product, which is called, running hot and burning whatever. That immediately indicates the kind of the data that was causing the problem. But yes, challenging. Yes.
I noticed on one of the slides you had UI elements with graphs.
Mm-hmm.
That's by.
Oh yeah.
So I was just wondering because I've had this problem recently. Have you ever tried automating those graphs? Because I'm trying to find an elegant solution. Snapshot testing won't work.
Yeah.
The data's all over the place.
Yeah.
Change all that kind of stuff. And the other option was getting it from the data from source from the database.
Yep.
And then using the SVG elements to test. But again, that's highly complex and pretty brittle. So I was just wondering what you guys do if you do anything.
I've got a way to just get to the data that drives the chart. So I go in and then the automation actually pulls the data out of this chart and goes, what is it? And it then validates individually the columns and cells. It doesn't validate the chart itself because unlike most teams, maybe, this is all Salesforce. So we're working on the Salesforce platform. Salesforce generate the chart. We just generate all the ingredients. So I validate the ingredients. I don't want to test Salesforce. If there's a problem with Salesforce, we'll look at it and go, Salesforce case, they happen all the time. But I want to only test what my team is responsible for. So I don't go anywhere near that. Yes. Oh, you, yep.
Production data can be sensitive.
Yep.
You said customer data.
Yep.
So how do you overcome that to get your truth?
It's tricky. Oh, it depends. Yeah. So getting real customer data is a challenge, and knowing that all customer data is as dodgy as the next customer, because we found that when we did our AI model, it's just best endeavors, really. You got to try your best. You got to do what you can based on the information you're provided with. You talk to the implementation teams that configure the environment when it gets to a customer, and they explain, the 10 different flavors that could happen, and then you try and make sure that they are catered for when you come up with your data scenarios. But yes, it is a lot of upfront work. Any more questions? Yes.
One of your constraints was that you had a lack of sort of dedicated QA resource.
Yeah.
How would you attempt to pitch this to that dedicated QA resource should it ever continue to exist in Dortmund? Would you try to push it to them?
I would do it by, as a QA, I previously found that my voice wasn't very loud in the room, and the engineers and product would be like, well, we're delivering software. We just want it written. Having software out there, if it breaks, then we'll fix it. Obviously, I had a slightly different attitude, and selling this to a QA, I think would be quite easy. I think they want software to work, and if they can have a hand in generating those different use cases, then it'll just benefit everyone. And having everyone be on the same page will just make a closer team. Yeah, no problems. Any more questions?
Okay, well, I've been inspired, so I'm going to just check my data now, and my data is telling me that we now have a break.
Woo!
Until the next.